All right, beautiful people. Today is one of the most important presentations that I'm going to give. It's going to let you know where your level of consciousness is at and how you can improve it to allow more abundance to flow into your life. All right, let's hit the intro. Let's not even wait for this. Let's go. All right, all right. What's up, everybody? It is a lovely Friday. We do not have anyone here, so I can't ask anyone to see what the volume is like, but I'm really curious on what the volume sounds like if people could hear. So if anyone is watching right now, if you could let me know how the volume is, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm going to do a little mic check here real quick just to see if I could hear myself right now. If you could let me know. All right, I could hear myself. Perfect. I'm not talking into the ether. All right, beautiful, beautiful. So today I want to walk you through what is known as spiral dynamics. And what is spiral dynamics? Spiral dynamics are the 8 stages of your consciousness that you will go through in your lifetime. Well, not everyone goes through all 8 stages, but if you allow your consciousness to continue to expand and if you don't hold it back, you can get through all 8 stages. And why are all 8 stages so important? Well, once you understand these 8 stages of consciousness, you'll start understanding why some of the things that you used to do that used to make you happy no longer make you happy. And you'll start understanding why. Why when you see a piece of information and someone else sees the exact same piece of information, you guys have differing opinions about it. And so many of the challenges that are going on in this world politically, with the vaccines, with the virus, all of these differing opinions, why is that? That so many smart people have differing opinions. So once you understand spiral dynamics, you will be able to understand why smart people disagree on certain things. And when it's so obvious to one person, and once you start understanding this framework, you're going to really be able to live a life of equanimity, live a life of peace, live a life of abundance, and be much more open to other people that think different ways. And not just be open to them, but welcome it. Welcome it. All right, so let's go ahead. Let me open up the deck right here that I wanted to walk everyone through. And so, all right. So how's everyone doing on this Friday? I hope everyone is doing okay. Lovely Friday. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. And let me post this so people know what we're talking about in case they just jump in halfway. All right, so why is it so important to understanding the 8 levels of consciousness? Why is it so important to understand this? Well, if you don't understand this, you're going to have a lot of blind spots. Have a lot of blind spots in your life and wonder, why do people think differently than me? Why is it when something's so obvious to me, other people can't understand? Why is it when I try to help my friends or my wife, like they get pissed off? Well, once you understand spiral dynamics, you will be in the top 1% of understanding human psychology. And what I really love about this model is the most important thing about this model is that it wasn't developed like in a clinical setting. It was researchers that were out in Australia, Africa, Asia, Europe, America, South America, researching people and really looking at all the common things that would unite people together. All right, that would unite people together, and that is how they came up with this framework. All right, this is how they came up with this framework. So let's go ahead and jump into the different stages. So the stages, they're broken up into 2 tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. So there's 6 stages in tier 1, 2 stages in tier 2. And if you notice, each stage has a color and a theme associated with it. And if you notice, all the odd number stages have the word self, all the even numbers have the word collective at the very end. So basically, you learn about the world, you experience the world through your consciousness, through focusing on yourself or focusing on other people. So if you manage to get through all 8 stages, well, beautiful. You go through this process 4 times where you undulate between focusing on yourself and then focusing on other people. All right. So before we jump into the stages, here's a few things that I want you to think about and really keep in mind as I'm going through all the stages. So a higher stage, it doesn't necessarily mean a better stage. It just means that there's more nuance in that particular stage, all right? And no stage is either good or bad because there's positive and shadow manifestations to each side. And if you're like most people, once you learn about these stages, you're like, hey, I want to get to this highest stage as quickly as possible. But this framework is not meant for that. This framework is actually to have much more foundational understanding of each stage before you go to the next stage. So as you climb higher and higher, you have a good foundation of support underneath that. All right. So let me see if there's anything else that I'm missing here. Not really. Okay. So I would say the last thing is like each stage, it really just talks about what are your important core values. All right. What are your important core values? So let's start getting into each stage. Here we got 2 people watching. Hello, you two. I don't know who's watching, but if you want to give a thumbs up or just say hello, I will shout you out. But let's go into stage number 1 here. All right. So stage number 1 of your consciousness, tier 1, stage 1, it's the survival stage. It's connected to the color beige. So I will refer to these in colors more than in stage numbers. It's a little bit easier to remember. That's why they associated them with with colors. But in this stage, you're really focused on yourself, your own survival, and your main modus operandi is to just stay alive, And everything is very instinctual. So your diaper's wet, you cry. Your stomach is hungry, you cry. Your skin is itchy, you cry. And then an adult comes and takes care of you, right? So you start understanding that, like, yeah, I'm surviving. I need some help. When I cry, someone comes and helps me. This is really cool. All right, I got some tools under my toolkit now. And some examples of this are just babies and infants, maybe even senile elderly that are dealing with dementia. Their whole framework for living is just to survive. So each stage has what they call a transformational dilemma. And what is the transformational dilemma? Well, the transformational dilemma for each stage is that you are doing the same things that you normally do, and the things that you normally do no longer make you happy anymore. So the transformational dilemma of stage 1 is you realize that just surviving isn't enough. You want to also thrive. So surviving isn't enough. You want to thrive. And you notice that when you're with more people, not only does your ability to survive increase, but it's more fun. You have people to talk to. Like when you cry and your mom and dad come and feed you, you're kind of like, oh, this is better. Someone's holding me, someone's soothing me. So you start realizing if I only worry about myself, that's a certain type of lifestyle. But if I start, widening my circle of concern to other people, not only can I survive, but I could also thrive. All right. So just checking in, everyone got a good understanding of tier 1. Any questions about tier 1? It's pretty straightforward, very basic level of human consciousness. But if you have any questions, please do ask. I want to make this really interactive because, as I said, if you understand this, you're going to be in the top 1% of understanding human psychology. Okay. So now we get into stage 2, the mystical stage, the purple stage. All right. So this purple stage, and as I'm talking about this, I want you to start thinking about spiral dynamics as it applies to the individual, as it applies to the group, as it applies to the community, as it applies to the city, to the state, to the country, and to the world. All right. So this is the beauty of this model is it gets super meta or it could get super micro. All right. Super meta, super micro. So it encompasses almost everything. And just like any other model, there are things that fall outside of the model, but 99.9% of the things that I think through, when I run it through this particular model, everything just makes perfect sense, including the polarization of politics in America. And I'll get into that a little bit later, even though I don't talk about politics that much, but you'll start understanding why, because you'll start seeing politics is a tier 1 thing. Anyways, let's jump into this. All right. So in this stage, instead of just focusing on yourself, you go back to focusing on the collective because you realize that there's strength in numbers. And it's kind of like, a school of fish or a flock of birds. And they call this the mystical stage because rationality and logic, it isn't quite fully developed at this stage. Think about young children that maybe the first time they see TV, they think, are there any people behind this magical window? And then they realize, when they're older, it's just millions of pixels with millions of colors that are recreating this image, but there's actually no one there. But in their mind, logically, it's like, hey, there's people inside this magical box. All right. So in this stage, as I said, logic isn't fully developed. So causal effects. Like it may rain one night, and if your goldfish dies, you may think, oh shit, every time it rains, my goldfish dies, right? You might put causal effects incorrectly onto each other. And in this stage, voodoo, folk remedies, medicine men, they're all very prevalent. So in this stage, you might like scoff at this stage, like, oh man, this is like the mystical stage. There's no logic, there's no rationality, there's no science. But people in this stage are highly, highly connected to the energy of the world. Highly connected to the energy of the world. And in this stage, your tribe, your people, they're the good people. And who are the bad guys? It's anyone outside of your tribe. All right. So some examples of this are just, indigenous tribes, Asiatic, African, South American, North American, indigenous tribes. If you guys have watched Avatar, one of my favorite movies, the Na'vi would be a good example of a community in this stage. Typically tribes of 50 to 150 people fall into this mystical purple stage. And well, this mystical purple consciousness doesn't just exist in ancient civilizations. It also exists in modern society. Like, before you go in for an interview, you put on the lucky tights or the lucky pair of panties or something like that. Well, I don't put on my lucky pair of panties, but maybe a better example are athletes. Athletes that want to put on their lucky jock strap, to win a game. That would be a good example of this stage 2 mystical thinking of consciousness. All right. So what's the transformational dilemma of stage 2? Well, the transformational dilemma is that you start realizing, like in the group, there are some people that work harder than other people. And why should we share everything equally if some people are obviously contributing more than other people? So you start realizing that, yeah, I'm smarter than that person. I'm stronger than this person. I'm more efficient than all these people. So instead of just being one of the fish in the school of fish or one of the birds in the flock of the birds, you start realizing, wow, what if I just try to dominate the tribe? Why don't I start dominating the tribe? Like, just this whole everything is equal stuff, it's just not working for me. And then so that takes us into stage number 3, the power stage. And why is the power stage so important? Well, this is when you really start stepping into your own person. So I know there's just a handful of people watching right now, but any questions about the first 2 stages? If not, I'm just going to keep rolling through these stages because there's a lot to cover here. All right. So stage 3 is the power stage. You were just focusing on the collective, focusing on everyone else, and you realize, hey, it's time to start for me to focus on myself. I want to live into my full potentiality. I don't want to be dragged down by other people. And in this stage, because it's a very powerful stage, it's really marked by like your ego and self-gratification and short-sightedness. You're very impulsive. So if you see a pizza, you eat a pizza. If you see someone that you want to date, you go out and ask them. If you want a new car, you just go out and buy a new car. So it's like very, very impulsive. And in this stage, morality is more based on power, not on ethics. So if you're bigger and stronger than someone, you could take things from them and it's perfectly okay. There's no remorse when you do things by force. And maybe the best example I could give are, if you watch 2 young children playing, a 5-year-old will take the toy away from a 3-year-old with no remorse. Why? Well, they just learned this from their parents. Their parents tell them when to go to bed. They take their toys away, tell them when to eat. And why can the parents do that? Well, because they're bigger and stronger. So this is what young children will do to each other to exercise their power. All right. So as I said, none of these stages are 100% good or bad. Each stage is neutral, but there are positive and negative manifestations of each of these stages. So some negative manifestations might be like gang leaders, the mafia, yakuza, people that just, take things with force, and they have no remorse. And on the positive side of things, a positive manifestation of the power stage would be like a soldier. Maybe you're a pacifist and your country needs you to fight for their country. And so you can step into your power stage, and even though you are a pacifist, you'll go to war because you have that in you to protect, right? So this is a positive manifestation of the power stage. Now, the transformational dilemma here is that you realize that you've been impulsive, that you've been short-sighted, and many of your long-term goals, your short-term desires come at the expense of your long-term goals. And you also realize, like, so many people only follow me because they're scared of me. And because you rose to power by utilizing force and power, you realize, yeah, deep down that once there's someone stronger than you, they're going to take over the tribe. So it's really, really hard to sleep at night. It's really hard to sleep at night when you're in this stage. And that's the transformational dilemma. You're like, man, like if I just keep worrying about myself, taking the things that I want, enjoying the food that I want to eat, getting together with the partners that I want to get together with at the expense of everyone else, that's not a great long-term strategy for a life of joy, purpose, and fulfillment. All right, Bianca Mercedes says, good morning. I've been manifesting greatness as of late. Thank you for being here. Bianca, so awesome. And I know that you have been manifesting, and keep manifesting. Stay in that high vibration, all right? So the transformational dilemma of stage 3 is you start realizing, people don't really like you. Other people are going to want to take your position. And maybe being a self-centered, egotistic bastard is not a good thing for your long-term joy, purpose, and fulfillment. So this takes us into the next stage, stage 4, the conformist stage, the blue stage. So you realized, man, I was really focused on myself, attaining power, attaining riches, attaining luxury items. Maybe I should focus on other people again. Like being selfish, just focusing on myself, didn't lead to long-term great results. So this brings us into the conformist stage, the blue stage. So now, instead of instant gratification, you're open to delayed gratification because you're connected to something greater than yourself, nature, universe, or God. And once we get into stage blue, this is when societies start going from tribes of 150 people to larger cities, because you're connected to something greater than themselves. You're okay with delayed gratification. People are promising you if you suffer in your physical life, you'll live eternal bliss in heaven, so it's worth it. It's worth it to sacrifice our lives to build all these cathedrals, to build all these mosques, to do all these things, and to conform with society. And so conforming with society is very important. Why? Well, because there's a right way and wrong way to do things. There are good people and there are evil people. And what's the good people? Well, the good people are everyone that believes the same thing as us. And who are the evil people? Well, everyone that believes in like anything different, a different God. And so in this conformist stage, there is very rigid hierarchies. There is black and white truth. There's a right way, there's a wrong thing to do something. And sacrificing for your family, for your tradition, for your country, all very, very normal in this conformist stage. The more people fit in, the more people think the same, the better the society is going to be. And guess what? Our culture is the only valid culture. So what are some examples of stage 4 conformist blue consciousness? Well, just think about any religious ruled country or religious ruled governments. The Bible Belt in America, the Amish, young children who look up to authority figures. And I would say, in my opinion, a positive manifestation of someone in stage blue, the conformist stage, would be Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. All right. Ned always wants Homer to go to church, but when Homer doesn't go to church, Ned doesn't tell him you're going to burn in hell. Ned's just kind of like, okay, well, hey, I told you to go to church. You don't want to go. No big deal. Oakley dokley. I'm on my way. Right. So that's a positive manifestation of stage blue. And as I said, this is when we started going from tribal living into more larger cities. All right. So what's the transformational dilemma of stage blue? Well, the transformational dilemma is you start realizing, just like in stage 2, the purple stage, is that not everyone is doing equal amount of work, but everyone is getting equal rations, right? And there are very, very strict hierarchies. Usually countries in stage blue are caste systems, so it doesn't matter how hard you work or how little you work, you're just stuck in your same caste. So you start realizing like, hey, this isn't fair. Like, and the people that have all the riches, the popes, the people that are spiritually connected that tell you, hey, sacrifice your entire life in order to go to heaven. They've never proven to you that God exists. They've never shown you that eternal bliss is waiting for you. For all you know, they might be bullshitting you. So that takes you into the next stage, which is, all right, like, let's stop believing in things that we can't prove. Let's start working on things that are highly, highly provable, that are logical, that are rational. All right. So now this takes us into stage 5, the achiever stage. So right now, you should start really being able to think about a lot of people that you know in life. A lot of people that you know in life should be falling into this category. All right. And so the blue stage, this is where all the high achievers fall into. So instead of believing in some mystical God or things that you can't prove with science, you really start using logic, rationality, things that you could prove. Break things down to the atomic unit as your way of communicating with the world. So now the power is no longer in the businesses. The power is now in the hands. The power is no longer in the hands of the government or the churches. The power is now in the hands of the businesses. Why? Well, the businesses are able to donate to all the governments that pull all the shots, right? And in this phase, you're focusing on yourself. And you focus on yourself because you realize, like, hey, if I work harder than other people, if I put in more hours, if I am, really pushing myself on doing these things, I should be able to get more. So a lot of first world countries are like this, all right? First world countries are like this. And because they are like this, there is a huge ability to be able to do more. Like if you are poor and you work hard, you could become rich. There's more opportunity for that. But there are some downsides to stage 5. Stage 5 is that, well, it's all about consumerism. So the definition of a good life, instead of sacrificing while you're alive, the definition of good life is to accumulate as many material things in this lifetime as possible. And that is the definition of a good life. And it's a progress at all cost mentality, meaning if you made $1 billion this year, you need to make 1.2 billion next year. If you only make $1 billion next year, then that's considered not successful. All right. So in this stage 5 achiever stage, and remember, we're only out of 8 stages, the achiever stage is just barely past the halfway point. And this is where most people get stuck in life. They believe stage 5 of your consciousness, the achiever stage, is the highest stage. The Jeff Bezos, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks of the world, they're all stage 5 consciousness. They're all hyper-focused on external achievements because these external achievements mean they are winning in life. All right. So examples of stage 5 folks. Typically, recent college graduates really want to establish themselves in the workplace. First world countries like the United States, industries like Wall Street, finance, Silicon Valley, CEOs, entrepreneurs, highly stage 5, achiever stage, orange. So what is the problem with the achiever stage? What is the transformational dilemma? Probably you're asking yourself, Sabo, this sounds really cool. Why is it? Why is it that people don't like why is this not the top stage? Well, I'll tell you why this is not the top stage. It's because you start realizing that even if you achieve all your dreams and goals, those only bring you temporary happiness. And you sacrifice so much of your time, your health, your relationships in order to achieve all of these things. And these things don't even bring you long-term happiness. And because you haven't been hanging out with your friends, you've lost relationships, your family hasn't seen you. So you realize so much of your humanity was sacrificed. And these things didn't even bring you happiness. And because you were so hyper-focused on your goals, you probably caused a lot of damage to Mother Gaia at the same time, right? So you start realizing that, hey, just like in stage red, I need to open up my circle of concern to more people. If I'm just always achieving, I'll be on this hamster wheel of life and not really truly feeling the things that I want to feel, all right? So that's the transformational dilemma of stage 5. All right, so let's go into stage 6, the relativistic caring stage, the green stage. And so we are in the last stage of tier 1. And instead of focusing on yourself, we're back to focusing on the collective. You start rejecting shallow materialism. All the other stages believe my country is the best. Every other country isn't as good as mine. And so in this relativistic caring stage, you start recognizing other cultures. And not just recognizing them, but you're like, I want to welcome them, and you become very idealistic. You want to help everyone. You're no longer just like caring about yourself. And this is a really cool stage. This is where you start getting back into spirituality. You connect to something greater than yourself, but it doesn't have to be under the lens of like, Christianity, Catholicism, being a Muslim, being a Buddhist. It's all about your own personal connection to God, right? And you really want to help people. Now, some examples of this are hippies, New Agers, spiritual healers. And, when I say hippies and spiritual healers, a lot of people in stage 5, the orange stage, especially if you're hyper successful, It's really hard to believe that the person that buys crystals, the person that goes to sound baths, the person that does drum circles has higher levels of consciousness than you. But they do. That's a tough pill to swallow. Understanding that those that do, meditation, sound baths, drum circles, silent retreats have higher levels of consciousness than like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. That's a tough pill to swallow for people that have sacrificed so much in stage 5. But this is what will release you. This will allow you freedom. This is what will allow you to actually enjoy life. Because if you think stage 5 is the epitome, the achiever stage of consciousness, you're going to get stuck. That's why when you look at all the billionaires, look at them. Are any of them smiling, or do any of them look happy? No, they're all stuck in this stage of external validation. So in stage 6, you start going towards internal validation. You don't need outside validation. So what's the problem with stage 6? It sounded like hippie spiritual people. What's the problem with stage 6? Well, stage 6, they don't like hierarchies. But stage 6 holds their own ideology at the top of the hierarchy. All right? At the top of the hierarchy. And as open-minded as people in stage 6 are, as woke as people are in stage 6, well, they have no patience for people that are narrow-minded. So they exhibit a lot of the same qualities that the lower level stages do, but it's just a little bit more tricky. It's a little bit more hidden. It's a little bit more, it's like a shadow that hides from you that's really good at hiding from you. All right. So what's the transformational dilemma here? Well, you start realizing that you could point out so many of the world's problems, but you're not really good at coming up with solutions. You could tell everyone what you don't like, but you're not really good at telling them what you do like. And here's the interesting thing, is you're so open-minded, but you're not open-minded to people that aren't as open-minded as you, and you make them the enemy. So a negative manifestation of stage 6 would probably be something like Antifa. Anti-fascist, but they utilize a lot of fascist type of activities. And they don't see how hypocritical that the movement is. And, I'm a progressive, so, this is not me like pointing fingers at the other side. This is me pointing fingers at my own side and really kind of shedding light on the inconsistencies of the things that we say and the things that we do. And this is why stage 6, while it sounds like a high level of consciousness, it's still a tier 1 consciousness. All right. So let's get into tier 2. What's the difference between tier 2 and tier 1 consciousness? Well, in tier 1, everyone thinks if more people thought like me, the world would be a better place. If more people were just spiritual, the world would be a better place. If more people just picked themselves up by the bootstraps and, worked hard, the world would be a better place. If more people just prayed to God, Allah, Jesus, Buddha, Ganesha, whatever, the world would be a better place. If more people were just not politically correct and just took what they want, the world would be a better place, right? So this is all indicative of tier 1 thinking. So if I'm going through these tiers and you go, whoa, that sounds like me, don't worry. This is why I'm showing you all these different stages. Now, when you get to tier 2, you realize all the stages from 1 through 6, none are better than any of them. It's just like, is 11th grade more important than 9th grade? No, they're all important if you want to go to college. So once you get to stage 7, you realize like all the previous stages that think if more people thought like me, the world would be a better place. That's okay. That's where their consciousness is at. There's no problem with that. Like they're going to believe what they believe based on their level of consciousness, not based on whether they're good or bad people. So once you get to stage 7, the yellow stage, you realize life is super complex. There's so many shades of gray. Like if you ask someone that's stage 7, what's your favorite pizza? They'll say, well, is it winter? Is it summer? What fruits are in season? Is the cheese, GMO cheese? Where is the meat coming from? Where are the vegetables coming from? Is it soil to table or farm to table? All that type of stuff, like very, very particular. Sometimes it's kind of hard to hang out with stage yellow people, but don't worry. Only 1% of the world is in stage yellow. So if you're thinking, maybe I'm stage yellow, you're probably not. All right. Just to be frank. And so as I go through these stages, if you've been typing yourself, the general rule of thumb is whatever stage you think you're at, subtract 2 from that number. So if you think you're stage 7, you're probably stage 5. So in stage 7, you could hold paradoxes in your mind very easily. Like, hey, I'm pro guns, but I'm also pro choice. Or hey, like I am hyper progressive, but I also have conservative views. Like these paradoxes could easily live in someone who has tier 2 stage 7 thinking. And priority is mainly on competency. Competency. So it doesn't matter if you have certifications, it doesn't matter how much experience you have. It's just if you're competent at something, someone in stage 7 will be like, I'll hire him. So, for example, many institutions wouldn't hire people without a college degree. Someone that is a stage 7 thinker would be like, well, if you're competent at programming, you could work here. If you're competent at teaching jujitsu, you could work here. It's all about competency. All right. And in this stage 7, you start really realizing that, there are no out-of-box solutions that work for everyone. Everything is contextual. So what might work for someone at stage 6 will not work for someone at stage 5. And vice versa. So you start realizing in order to make change in the world, in order to help people raise their consciousness, you have to meet them where they're at. And if you can meet them where they're at, you can make tremendous change. So that is indicative of stage 7 thinking. And so there's only a few examples of that, like Eben Pagan, Ken Wilber. As I said, less than 1% of the world is at tier 2 stage 7 thinking. But this is why it's so important for me to share this roadmap with you, because once you understand this roadmap, you'll start really understanding that there is no reason to be pissed off at other people. There is no reason to be judgmental of other people. The only thing you should be focused on is expanding your consciousness, because when you expand your consciousness, you'll be able to see the world from so many different perspectives that you'll be able to see truth in whatever someone feels is important to them, not making them see your truth, but understanding the truth that they see. And that's the importance of the integral stage, yellow stage. All right. So what's the transformational dilemma at this stage? Well, just being able to look at the world in systems and create mental models out of everything, it doesn't really change anything in the world. It's just like these really interesting intellectual exercises that you could do, right? And so one thing that I missed about stage 7 is you no longer look at people as good or bad. You just look at the world and systems. There's good systems, there's bad systems. And just like stage 6, you're very open-minded to any system. But in stage 6, the spiritual stage, you make every system equal. As a stage 7 thinker, you go, no, I'm accepting of every system, but some systems are better than others depending on the context. So in stage 6, the spiritual stage, you're like so concerned with offending people that you try to make everything equal when things are not equal. So in stage 7, it's a little bit more nuanced. It's you're open-minded, you're accepting of everything, but you can absolutely say, hey, if you guys are if someone in stage 6 would be like, well, there's nothing wrong with clitorectomies. That's another culture. We don't understand that culture. If they think it's good, let them do it. Someone in stage 7 would be like, no, that's not acceptable. I'm open that it's a different culture. They have differing opinions, but clitorectomies is not a good thing for anyone. All right. So someone in stage 7 is like much more, they're just as open as someone at stage 6, but they understand that context is important. Context is important. All right. And some things are more true than others. And that brings us into the final stage, the holistic turquoise stage. So I don't really talk too much about this because the two examples were Jesus and Buddha. So my main focus is to help people get to stage 7. Now, here are just some nuances. We're not just all one color. We're combinations of all the different colors. And throughout the day, we could be different combinations of those colors. So I want you to think about all of those colors off of these. Let's see, there's 7 different axes here. Your moral axes, where do you fall in spiral dynamics? Your spiritual axes, where do you fall? Your mind, your cognitive axes, how you think about things, where do you fall in it? How you treat relationships in your life. Are you a stage blue conformist? Are you an achiever? Your emotional intelligence can be applied to this, your sexual intelligence, and the way you treat finances. So this is a really, really flexible model that you could utilize in order to figure out what stage of consciousness you're at, which stage of consciousness you could go to, what stage of consciousness are the people that you work with, what stage of consciousness are your kids, and really meet people where they're at and not have to try to convince people, think my way, because they're in a different level of consciousness. And when you're at a different level of consciousness, you experience things differently. All right, everyone. So if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, whatever. Do whatever you do. I'm going to be back in a few days with some more teachings that I love to teach. You guys have a wonderful weekend. I am out.